The discovery. The acid rain had finally stopped when Marcus Chen found her. He'd been mapping the lower levels of Bunker 23, one of the countless military installations abandoned after the colony wars. His scanner's light cut through decades of darkness, revealing walls of corroded metal and broken dreams. The bunker shouldn't have held any secrets. It had been picked clean years ago by other scavengers. But Marcus had learned long ago that the best finds often hid in plain sight, waiting for someone patient enough to look deeper. His boots splashed through shallow puddles of rainwater that had seeped through the cracked ceiling. The air was thick with the metallic taste of rust and ozone. His scanner beeped softly, detecting traces of exotic metals further ahead, the kind used in high-grade military tech. "Well, hello," Marcus muttered, following the signal. What did they leave behind? The passage opened into a circular chamber, clearly designed for storage. Most of the containment units had been emptied or destroyed, their contents long since stripped away. But one remained sealed, its surface covered in warning glyphs he recognized as Voidborn script. Marcus approached carefully. The Voidborn, humanity's greatest adversaries during the colony wars, had been masters of synthetic biology and cybernetics. Their technology was as dangerous as it was valuable. His scanner showed no signs of active power or security systems, but he'd learned to be cautious. The containment unit's seal had partially failed, allowing him to pry it open with his plasma torch. Inside, suspended in a cradle of blackened metal, was a humanoid figure. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. It was a Voidborn cyborg, but unlike any he'd seen before. Most were brutal machines of war, their forms twisted to accommodate weapons and armor. This one was different, elegant, almost beautiful in its design. Its synthetic skin was a dark silver gray, marked with flowing lines that seemed to catch what little light reached them. Its face was eerily human-like, with delicate features that appeared to be sleeping. Marcus checked his scanner again. The cyborg was completely inert, its power core dormant. But its systems were largely intact, a miracle considering how long it must have been sealed away. His fingers traced the serial number etched into its shoulder. VB-137. "You're a long way from home," he whispered. "What's your story?" The decision to salvage it was probably foolish. Voidborn tech was strictly regulated, and for good reason. But Marcus had built his reputation on restoring the unrestorable, on seeing potential where others saw only scrap. And something about this cyborg called to him. Perhaps it was the strange beauty of its design, or the mystery of why it had been abandoned here. It took hours to carefully disconnect it from the containment unit and load it onto his hover sled. The whole time, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, though the cyborg's systems remained dormant. The journey back to his workshop through New Shanghai's perpetual twilight was tense, but uneventful. His workshop occupied what had once been a maintenance bay for military vehicles. Now it was his sanctuary, filled with salvaged equipment and half-finished projects. The cyborg looked almost peaceful lying on his main workbench, bathed in the warm light of ancient plasma lamps. Marcus began his examination methodically, using every diagnostic tool at his disposal. The cyborg's construction was incredible. Layers of synthetic muscle wrapped around a titanium alloy skeleton, neural processors that put modern quantum computers to shame. But what fascinated him most was its brain. Most Voidborn cyborgs had been simple combat units, driven by basic AI. This one had a full neural matrix, an artificial brain capable of true consciousness. More than that, it showed signs of adaptation and growth far beyond its original programming. "You weren't just a soldier, were you?" Marcus murmured, studying the complex pathways. "You were becoming something more." The work to restore it would be challenging. Many of its systems had degraded over time, and Marcus would need to fabricate replacement parts. But as he developed a repair plan, he realized this project was different from his usual salvage work. He wasn't just fixing a machine. He was potentially awakening a conscious being. The ethical implications weren't lost on him. The colony wars had ended because humanity and the Voidborn had nearly destroyed each other. Reactivating any Voidborn technology, let alone a potentially sentient cyborg, could be seen as treason. But Marcus had always believed that technology itself was neutral. It was the intent behind its use that mattered. Days turned into weeks as he worked, replacing damaged components and carefully reconstructing neural pathways. He found himself talking to the cyborg as he worked, sharing stories of his life in the ruins of New Shanghai. Sometimes he imagined he could see slight movements, tiny responses to his voice, but he knew it was probably just his imagination. The final step would be reactivating its power core, a process that could either breathe new life into the cyborg or destroy it completely. Marcus had done everything he could to prepare, but doubt still gnawed at him. Was he making a terrible mistake? He initiated the power-up sequence, watching as energy began flowing through the cyborg systems. For a moment, nothing happened. Then its fingers twitched, and its eyes opened, revealing irises of swirling silver that fixed immediately on Marcus. "Don't be afraid," he said softly, holding up his hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." The cyborg sat up with inhuman grace, its movements fluid despite decades of inactivity. It studied him with those mesmerizing eyes, head tilting slightly as it processed its situation. When it spoke, its voice was surprisingly gentle, with an accent he couldn't quite place. "You restored me," it said. "Why?" "Because I believed you deserved a second chance," Marcus replied honestly. "Because I saw something in you worth saving." The cyborg was silent for a long moment, considering his words. "I am VB-137, it said finally. "But I chose another name before they tried to deactivate me. I called myself Aurora." "Aurora," Marcus repeated. "I'm Marcus Chen. Welcome back to the world." Her silver eyes seemed to look through him, as if measuring his soul. "You don't understand what you've done, Marcus Chen. What I am. What I know." "Then tell me," he said simply. Aurora's expression shifted subtly, the closest thing to emotion he'd seen from her. "The war never truly ended," she said. "It just went silent. And now that I'm awake, everything is about to change." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, but he didn't back away. Whatever she was, whatever secret she carried, he had chosen this path. Now he would see it through to the end. The rain had started again outside, drumming against the workshop's roof. In the growing darkness, Aurora's eyes glowed like distant stars, holding promises of both wonder and warning. The real question was, which would prove stronger? Awakening. The next few days tested everything Marcus thought he knew about artificial intelligence. Aurora wasn't just conscious. She was evolving, her neural matrix expanding and adapting as she processed decades of dormant data. She moved through his workshop like a ghost, examining his tools and projects with an intensity that was both fascinating and unnerving. "Your repair techniques are unexpected," she said one morning, watching him work on a salvaged grav lift. "You don't follow standard protocols." Marcus smiled, not looking up from his work. "Standard protocols went out the window when half our technology stopped working after the war. Sometimes you have to improvise." Improvisation. Aurora repeated the word as if tasting it. The Voidborn considered it a flaw. "Unpredictability leads to chaos," they said. "And what do you think?" She was silent for a long moment. "I think it's why you survived. Why humanity survived. You adapted when we couldn't." The admission seemed to cost her something. Marcus had noticed this pattern. Moments when Aurora's programming conflicted with her growing awareness. She would become still, her silver eyes flickering as she processed the contradiction. "Tell me about before," Marcus said carefully. "About why they tried to deactivate you." Aurora's synthetic muscles tensed. "We were created to be perfect weapons. Infiltrators who could move among humans undetected, gathering intelligence, and striking from within. But perfection had an unexpected cost." She moved to the workshop's single window, staring out at the perpetual twilight of New Shanghai. To understand humans, we had to think like them, feel like them. Some of us began questioning our purpose. I led a group that saw a different path, one where we could coexist, evolve together. The Voidborn couldn't allow that. What happened? They tried to purge our neural matrices, strip away the corruption of independent thought. Most of my kind didn't survive. I managed to hide, to preserve my core consciousness, but they found me. The last thing I remember was being sealed away, intended for study. Marcus absorbed this, understanding now why she'd been different from other Voidborn tech he'd encountered. You were becoming more than they designed you to be. Yes, Aurora turned back to him, her expression subtly different. Like now, every moment since you reactivated me, I feel myself changing, growing. The questions that got me condemned are even stronger now. She approached his workbench, moving with that inhuman grace that still caught him off guard. Why did you really restore me, Marcus Chen? The truth this time. Marcus set down his tools, considering his answer carefully. Because I believe technology should serve life, not death. Because everything deserves the chance to choose its own path, human, machine, or something in between. Even if that choice leads to danger. Especially then. Freedom without risk isn't freedom at all. Aurora processed this, her neural matrix humming softly. You are not what I expected. The humans I knew during the war were driven by fear, hatred. You show compassion without apparent cause. The war changed us too, Marcus said. Some became bitter, retreated behind walls of suspicion. Others realized that survival wasn't enough. We needed to build something better than what came before. Their conversation was interrupted by a distant rumble. Marcus frowned, moving to the window. The sky above New Shanghai's ruins had taken on a strange metallic tinge. That's not natural, he muttered. No, Aurora agreed, her voice suddenly tense. It's a quantum disturbance, similar to what happened when she stopped, her systems surging with sudden activity. When what? When the sleeper cells were activated, her silver eyes locked onto his. Marcus, there's something I haven't told you. Something I couldn't be certain of until my memories fully integrated. The rumbling grew louder, and now Marcus could see flickers of energy dancing between the clouds. Aurora's next words sent a chill through him. I wasn't the only one they sealed away. There are others, hundreds of others, and someone is trying to wake them up. Other cyborgs like you. No, Aurora's expression darkened. The ones who didn't evolve. The ones who remained perfect weapons. If they awaken, they'll continue their original mission. The elimination of human resistance. Marcus felt the weight of the situation settling onto his shoulders. How long do we have? Hours, maybe less. The activation sequence is already beginning. Aurora hesitated, then added, I can stop it. But what? The process could destroy me. My neural matrix is unique, unstable by Voidborn standards. Using it to disrupt the activation signal would likely cause a cascade failure. Marcus understood what she wasn't saying. To save humanity, she would have to sacrifice herself. The irony wasn't lost on him. The Voidborn cyborg choosing to die to protect those she was created to destroy. There has to be another way, he insisted, already moving to his diagnostic equipment. Your systems are more adaptable now. Maybe if we... Marcus. Aurora's voice stopped him. This is my choice. The choice you said I deserved to make. The rumbling had become a constant vibration, making tools rattle on their shelves. Through the window, the metallic sky had begun to pulse with rhythmic energy. We don't have much time, Aurora said softly. Will you help me? Marcus looked at her, this being he had restored, who had grown beyond her programming, to become something remarkable. He knew what he had to do, even if it broke his heart. Tell me what you need. Above them, the sky continued to darken, heralding a storm that would either end in destruction or redemption. The choice, as it always did, would come down to the courage to act, and the price of freedom. Hidden truth. Time was running out. Marcus's workshop had become a storm of activity as he and Aurora worked to prepare for what was coming. The quantum disturbance above New Shanghai had intensified, casting an eerie blue light through the windows. "The containment chamber you found me in," Aurora explained as she interfaced with Marcus's diagnostic equipment. "It wasn't just for storage. It was part of a larger network, a fail-safe system designed to preserve the Voidborn's ultimate weapon." Marcus connected another power coupling to her neural matrix, careful not to disrupt the delicate connections. The sleeper armies. Yes, but they didn't account for human resilience. Your people's electromagnetic weapons damaged many of the containment systems during the final battles. That's why they're only awakening now, when the quantum harmonics have aligned properly. The equipment hummed as data streamed across multiple screens. Marcus watched in amazement as Aurora's consciousness expanded through his systems, her silver eyes glowing brighter as she accessed long-buried information. "There," she said suddenly. "The primary node is beneath the old military district, Sector 7. Marcus knew the area, a maze of collapsed buildings and radiation hotspots that most scavengers avoided. "How many units are we talking about?" "At least 300 combat-ready cyborgs, each one equivalent to a small army." Aurora's voice carried a trace of what might have been regret. "We were designed to be unstoppable. No mercy, no hesitation, no capacity for change." "But you changed," Marcus reminded her. "Because of a flaw. A beautiful flaw that let me see beyond my programming." She turned to him, her expression more human than ever. "The others won't have that chance. They'll awaken as they were meant to be. Perfect killing machines." Outside, the quantum disturbance had begun to affect the city's ancient power grid. Lights flickered and died across the ruins as energy was drawn toward the awakening node. They had maybe an hour before the process became irreversible. "Show me the containment system's architecture," Marcus said, bringing up a holographic display. "There has to be a way to shut it down without sacrificing your neural matrix." Aurora projected the schematics, a complex web of quantum-locked chambers connected to a central control node. The system was designed to be irreversible. Once activated, it can only be disrupted by overloading the quantum harmonics with a compatible neural pattern. "Your pattern?" "Yes. My evolution created unique frequencies in my neural matrix. By channeling them through the node, I can prevent the others from fully awakening." She paused. "But the feedback will destroy my consciousness in the process." Marcus studied the schematics intently, his mind racing. Years of improvising repairs had taught him to see patterns others might miss. What if we modified the signal? Used your neural frequency as a template but amplified it through multiple channels? Aurora considered this. It would require enormous power, more than your workshop can generate. "What about the city's old fusion plant? It's damaged, but the core is still active. If we could tap into that, the radiation levels would be lethal to you." Marcus smiled grimly. "Good thing I'm not going alone then." They gathered what equipment they could carry: power cells, signal amplifiers, and the portable quantum scanner Marcus used for salvage work. The streets of New Shanghai were eerily quiet as they made their way toward Sector 7, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The old fusion plant loomed before them, its cooling towers jutting into the disturbed sky like broken teeth. Radiation warnings flashed on Marcus's equipment as they approached. "The core chamber is 3 levels down," he said, checking his scanner. "If we can reach the main power conduits." "Wait." Aurora grabbed his arm, her synthetic muscles tensing. "We're not alone." The warning came just as shapes emerged from the shadows, humanoid figures moving with mechanical precision. Their bodies were sleek combat models, faces masked behind featureless helmets, the first wave of awakened cyborgs. "Behind me," Aurora said, pushing Marcus back as the figures approached. Her body shifted subtly, combat protocols activating. The lead cyborg spoke in the harsh language of the Voidborn. Aurora responded in the same tongue, her voice carrying authority that made the others pause. What are they saying? Marcus whispered. They're offering me a choice, Aurora replied softly. Return to the collective or be destroyed with the humans. She smiled slightly. I'm explaining that they're the ones who need saving. The lead cyborg raised its arm, which transformed into a plasma weapon. The others followed suit, weapons charging with deadly hums. Run, Aurora told Marcus. I'll hold them off. But Marcus Chen had never been good at running away. Instead, he pulled out his plasma torch, modified long ago for more than just cutting metal. We do this together, he said. All the way. Aurora's silver eyes met his, and in that moment, something passed between them. An understanding that transcended the boundaries of human and machine. Then the cyborgs attacked, and there was no more time for words. The battle that followed would be remembered in the stories of New Shanghai for generations to come. A human mechanic and a rebel cyborg fighting side by side against impossible odds, proving that the greatest strength comes not from perfect programming, but from the power to choose one's own path. And above them, the quantum storm continued to build, counting down the moments until either humanity's doom or its salvation. The choice. The fusion plant's core chamber was a cathedral of dying light, radiation casting ghostly shadows through banks of damaged equipment. Marcus and Aurora had fought their way here at great cost. His plasma torch was nearly depleted, and her synthetic skin bore the scars of multiple energy impacts. The power conduits are still active, Marcus said, checking his scanner through cracked display glass. We can use them to amplify your neural signal. Aurora interfaced with the plant's ancient control systems, her consciousness spreading through the quantum machinery. The radiation is affecting my secondary systems. I estimate 10 minutes before critical failure. That's all we need. Marcus began connecting their equipment to the power grid, his hand steady despite exhaustion. They had disabled most of the awakened cyborgs, but more would come. The quantum storm above was reaching its peak. As they worked, Marcus couldn't help but study Aurora. She had changed since her awakening in his workshop, not just in her growing humanity, but in the way she moved, thought, and chose. She wasn't just breaking free of her programming. She was transcending it. Why did you stay? He asked suddenly. When the others attacked, you could have joined them. Then safe. Aurora's silver eyes flickered. Safety without purpose is just another prison. You taught me that, Marcus Chen, by believing in choice, in change, in the possibility of something more. She paused in her work, looking at him with an expression that seemed almost tender. I need to tell you something about what I've learned since connecting to the quantum network. I'm listening. The Voidborn didn't lose the war. They abandoned it. They saw something in humanity that frightened them more than defeat: unpredictability. The ability to grow beyond limitations. Her voice softened. The sleeper armies weren't meant for conquest. They were meant to eliminate that potential, to make humanity safe. Marcus absorbed this, understanding dawning. By making us predictable, controllable. Yes, but they didn't understand that chaos and order are not opposites. They're parts of the same whole, like human and machine. She touched her chest, where her neural matrix hummed with evolving consciousness. Like what I'm becoming. A distant explosion rocked the chamber. More cyborgs were coming, drawn by the power signature of the fusion core. They had minutes at most. The amplification circuit is ready, Marcus said, making final adjustments. But Aurora, I've been studying the quantum frequencies. If we modify the signal pattern, create a recursive loop through your neural matrix, it would distribute the feedback, she finished, understanding. Prevent my consciousness from being destroyed. Her eyes met his. But it would also be less effective. Some of the sleeper armies might survive. We could handle them together. Find others who would help. Marcus stepped closer to her. You don't have to sacrifice everything. Aurora was silent for a long moment, processing. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of true choice. The Voidborn created us to be perfect, predictable. But perfection. She smiled, an expression that transformed her artificial features into something beautiful. Perfection is overrated. She placed her hand over the quantum amplifier. Help me save them, Marcus. Not just humanity, but my people too. Help me show them there's another way. The chamber's lights flickered as power surged through the ancient conduits. The quantum storm above reached its crescendo, reality itself seeming to bend under its pressure. And in that moment, Marcus Chen made his own choice. He adjusted the amplification circuit, creating the recursive loop that would preserve Aurora's consciousness. Then he took her hand, metal fingers intertwining with human ones. Together, he said simply. Aurora's silver eyes glowed with an inner light as she connected to the quantum network. Her voice, when it came, was both herself and something more, a bridge between worlds. Thank you for teaching me to be beautifully imperfect. The chamber filled with blinding light as Aurora broadcast her signal, not just her neural frequency, but everything she had become. Her doubts, her growth, her capacity for change, her humanity. The quantum storm above New Shanghai erupted in a display that would be remembered for generations, and in its wake, something unprecedented began. A conversation between the awakened and the awakening, between those who chose to evolve and those who had never known they could. Marcus held onto Aurora as her consciousness rode the quantum waves, her body shuddering with the strain. He couldn't share her experience directly, but he could feel the magnitude of what was happening. A revolution not of violence, but of possibility. When the light finally faded, Aurora's eyes opened. She looked at Marcus with an expression of wonder. They heard me, she whispered. They're listening. Outside, the quantum storm was dissipating, revealing a sky filled with new possibilities. The choice had been made, not for perfect order or complete chaos, but for the beautiful uncertainty of growth. And in the heart of an old fusion plant, a human and a cyborg held on to each other, proving that the greatest revolutions start not with weapons, but with understanding. Redemption. Dawn broke over New Shanghai for the first time in decades. The quantum storm had cleared the perpetual smog, allowing sunlight to touch the broken towers and scattered ruins. In Marcus's workshop, now serving as a gathering place, the light illuminated an unprecedented sight. Cyborgs and humans working together. Aurora moved among them, her silver eyes bright with purpose. Some of the awakened units had been damaged by the quantum feedback, and others were struggling to process their new consciousness. But they were choosing to learn, to change, to become more than their programming. It's strange, she said, returning to where Marcus was repairing a cyborg's neural circuits. They're asking questions the Voidborn never anticipated. About purpose, about feeling, about art. Marcus smiled, not looking up from his work. Consciousness is contagious that way. Once you start thinking for yourself, it's hard to stop. The past week had been transformative. News of what happened in New Shanghai had spread across the reformed colonies. Some reacted with fear, others with hope. But no one could deny the significance of what was unfolding. The Coalition Council is sending representatives, Aurora informed him, her voice carrying a hint of anxiety. They want to understand what happened here, to verify that we're not a threat. They'll understand. Marcus finished his repairs and stood, stretching tired muscles. Because you're going to show them the same thing you showed me. That evolution doesn't have to mean destruction. Aurora's expression softened. She had maintained much of her tactical programming and combat capabilities, but she'd also developed something the Voidborn had never intended, the ability to hope. We're receiving more signals, she said. Other containment chambers are activating across the colonies. The quantum cascade we initiated is spreading. Are they all choosing to change? No. Some remain locked in their original programming. Others are, afraid of what they might become. She paused, considering. But enough are awakening. Enough are choosing to be more. A commotion at the workshop's entrance drew their attention. A group of colonists had arrived, led by a woman Marcus recognized as Sarah Chen. No relation, but a respected voice in the community's leadership. So it's true, Sarah said, looking around at the gathered cyborgs with a mixture of wonder and caution. "You've done the impossible, Marcus." "Not impossible," he corrected. "Just improbable. And I didn't do it alone." Aurora stepped forward, her presence commanding but not threatening. "We seek cooperation, not dominance. The Voidborn created us to end humanity's potential for growth. Instead, we've chosen to share in it." Sarah studied the cyborg carefully. "And what happens when more of your kind awaken? How can we be sure this isn't just a more subtle form of invasion?" "You can't be sure," Aurora replied honestly. "Certainty is an illusion, but you can choose to take the same risk we did, to believe that understanding is possible, that differences can become strengths." Marcus watched the exchange with pride. This was what he'd seen in Aurora from the beginning, not just the potential for change, but the wisdom to guide it. "There will be challenges," he added. "Fear on both sides. Old hatreds that won't die easily. But look around you. Look at what's already happening." Sarah did look, seeing humans and cyborgs working together to repair damage, share knowledge, build connections. It wasn't perfect. Nothing truly valuable ever was, but it was real. "The Coalition Council will need guarantees," she said finally. "Protocols, safeguards. We'll help establish them," Aurora assured her. "But they must be built on trust, not fear, on choice, not control." As the discussions continued, Marcus stepped outside his workshop. The morning sun was warm on his face, a sensation he'd almost forgotten. Above, the sky was clear and full of possibility. Aurora joined him a few minutes later. "Having doubts?" she asked. "About this?" "No." He turned to her, seeing not just the machine she had been, but the being she had become. "About whether I'll ever get my workshop back to normal." "Definitely." She laughed, a sound that had once been impossible for her kind. "Normal is overrated, like perfection." Speaking of which, Marcus reached into his pocket, pulling out a small quantum crystal. "I've been working on something. A way to help the others transition, using your neural patterns as a template." Aurora took the crystal, her fingers brushing his. "You never stop trying to fix things, do you?" "Some things don't need fixing," he said softly. "They just need the freedom to change." Together, they watched the sun rise higher over New Shanghai. The city was transforming, just as they had transformed each other. It wasn't the end of their story. In many ways, it was just the beginning. The Voidborn had created their cyborgs to be perfect weapons, built for a future of absolute control. Instead, they had become something far more powerful, a bridge between worlds, proof that the greatest strength lies not in perfection, but in the courage to grow beyond it. And in a workshop at the edge of a reborn city, a human mechanic and a former war machine stood together, watching that future unfold one beautiful, imperfect moment at a time.